We're gonna go, and we are live. I'm here with Jonas Preest. Is that your how you say your thing?
Yeah, that's it.
Is
How
that
you
you?
doing, David?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and this is my third interview in a row, and my wife is a little bit annoyed with me because like I'm supposed to be taking care of her, but we're gonna talk for an hour.
We can reschedule
No, no, no,
if it's
no, no,
better.
no, 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 no,
Oh,
no. We're
all
gonna
right.
talk for an hour, and then I'm gonna get back to my wife. But just to let you know, because normally what I would do is I would just talk to you until there's an organic sort of moment to end it. But I'll probably at about the hour mark, I'll probably say I got to go take care of my wife, and you know how it is. You got
I've got to do the same thing.
you got two or three dogs there. You said,
I have two dogs and one wife
and one child
and one child in the house. Yeah.
in that, or that's the priority, the order of priority you just listed there.
I wouldn't say so.
I'm
No,
kidding.
they're kind of.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Trying to get you in the doghouse. So we were just chatting about music, poetry, and stuff like that, and solutions. But before we get into that, I want to hear your sort of biographical background, if you don't mind, to the extent that you're comfortable sharing it. Talk
Not at
about
all.
talk about your childhood. Did you have any experience with religion or philosophy or cults or anything? And then how did puberty go for you? That's always fun. And then how did you get to where you are today? And where are you? Are you in the States or what?
I'm in Plymouth, Michigan, right outside of Detroit. I came here for a weekend in November 1990, so it's been a long weekend and a lot of lessons. Um, So I was born in New York. My mother was Jewish and my father was Protestant. And I was a breech baby. Right? So back then, when you came out ass first, it's called Frank breech. Apparently, there are other kinds. They just pushed you back in and flipped you around. So the story is apparently they asked my mother, do you want to be here for that? And she opted not to be, so they knocked her out, pushed me back, and brought me out there. But so my ass was actually born the day before the rest of me, and out of respect for other people born that day, I only celebrate the one birthday, but technically I probably should get two. I grew up in a very small town with fewer than 400 people in Western Massachusetts called Alford, which is not really famous for anything. We didn't have a store or anything like that. And my mother, like I said, was Jewish and my father was Protestant. Neither of them were very serious about it at that time. But then when I was about 8 years old, they got a Hallmark store, which gives you a whole nother perspective on the whole, faith and holiday thing. My mother became very serious about her Judaism later in life. And my father died when I was young, speaking of puberty, unrelated. He had pancreatic cancer. And I did not know him as a godly person. He certainly was very down on the church, although he had been a choir boy as a young young kid, whatever. But apparently his last words were, "God bless you." So interesting piece there for me. I mean, not for anybody else, but I also had a brother who was 10 years older than me who died of Lou Gehrig's disease. And during he was also, he was pretty, he went to church, and when he couldn't go to church anymore, the pastor came to, or priest came. I'm actually embarrassed to say I'm not sure what denomination that was. It was, but they would come to him, and he was taking communion, so it must have been Catholic. I know that the rest of his family is Catholic. He's got a different mother from me, and he had very powerful experiences of angels and in his sickness, and he was a giant hulk of a man. I mean, he was a 6'2", 6'3", but just a bear, and the kindest, hardest working person I've ever met. Still, I'm 52 now. I'm a model of a perfect human being to my taste, and he was, like I said, a very athletic guy, and he started out 230 pounds, healthy, muscular kind of guy, and ended up less than 90 pounds, and was wheeled past a mirror and saw himself as a skeleton. It couldn't move anything. I mean, he was down to being able to just. And he asked, why? I've tried to be a good person, and why me? And he was visited and got answers in a way that, as a general rule, we don't expect those to be credible reports. But I certainly, never knew him to lie. And so, from a personal perspective, I've always tried to stay open to it. I got very, very interested in all the books that I can read. So in English versions of Torah and the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran, and I keep them still for reference. And I love to go to church, and anytime I'm invited, I go to whatever denomination it happens to be. But I stop short of the whole. I mean, certainly the God from the book, I have a lot of issues with the church, not with people who are alive today, because belief is a very powerful thing, and it's a very important thing. Well, at any rate, I don't believe in God the way that the Bible prescribes, but I also don't believe there's not a God. I mean, I just don't think about it. It doesn't matter. Because if God created
One moment, please.
Yes.
One moment,
Yes.
please. I hate to interrupt you, but I'm noticing
I'm
your
glad you
audio
did.
is crunchy. I don't know what that is. Is it because it's too high or too low? I forgot to do a sound check with you, but it's only started. It's only started now to be crunchy. It's like making a crunchy sound, and I confirmed in the live chat, and they said yes, it does sound crunchy. So let's try to resolve that.
I wonder if it's me moving around, maybe.
No, it's not that.
Are you getting it now? It's crunchy.
Yeah.
Do I have any control on? This is a
Yeah.
new mic. I
You
just got
can
this.
check. Okay, we can check. Let's do a quick test where you go to the three dots below your screen on the Google Meet, and that's the three vertical dots. You'll check your audio settings.
Settings.
Because it will be mildly annoying hearing the crunching.
I apologize. Snowball Ice, and it says system default speaker device. It doesn't give me another option on that though.
Microphone.
But I'm using headphones, and I can hear you in my headphones, but not me.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see.
Oh, it says press and hold. Did that do anything? No.
No, but you might be able to. That's a new microphone, you said?
Yes, it is.
Can you unplug it and plug it back in, or is it USB, or is it audio jack? Sorry about this, folks. Can't hear you. Can't hear you anything. Can't hear. Nothing. Can you hear me? Nothing. Keep trying. Wave to me if you can hear me. Okay. So you can hear me. Still can't hear you. The other thing you can do is hang up and then rejoin the call. Just re-click that link and let's see what happens. That would be a good thing to try. You might actually have to restart your computer. I hope not. But let's try ending this call and then rejoining it, okay? So let's see what happens here. Sorry about this, folks. He should hop back on here.
Okay.
That sounds good.
No sound. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I still don't have my audio in my headphones, but I kind of know what I'm saying, so.
Yeah. So
I can read my lips.
It might be, it might kick back in which case we'll have to figure it out. But right now it sounds good. And I feel really bad to interrupt your flow there, because I know you're an organic thinker and an artist. You're an artist.
I very much prefer you jump in and interrupt us, because so I think I think where I was about God. And like I don't have a problem with God, never did. I mean, and I try to be open. Uh, so, and I understand that kind of big feeling, because I get it all the time in nature, and I've had it in churches, and there's something about that fellowship. But what I'm really interested in is the. Am I crackling again?
No,
Oh,
it's
what
all.
I'm really interested in is from the functional standpoint. What are the really important things about church that we're losing, and um, how do we move forward? What kind of a belief system? Because I think we need a belief system, obviously. Uh, I apologize. I got a little bit off on the microphone thing.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm going to ask you some pointed questions, okay? And we'll
Perfect.
get back in focus. So, the first thing I want to talk about is the situation today with your family and friends and entourage. What's the breakdown, just roughly? Like, are a lot of people free thinkers like you, or a lot of people like, do you have like your siblings who are still with us? Are they finding their way into different religions, or what's
My
happening?
sister, my sister, who I'm not close to, still lives back in Massachusetts and is does go to church every Sunday and is very active in the community. Um, my wife is Catholic and not very active,
Okay.
but it's important to her, and her father is very devout. So we try to be
Ah,
respectful of that. And
ah,
my son is a very free thinker, and is really curious about all this stuff. And
how old's he again?
uh, he's 9.
Okay, cool.
Um, and so, I mean, I guess I've got a little bit of everything around me. I've kind of been I had my back is gone. I was a chef, and uh, I lost another disc and I ended up with
Oh,
spinal surgery, and that's
oh,
what's brought me back to the poetry from my youth. It's kind of
oh,
felt like the universe was saying, "Hey, man, you should be writing." So, so
wow,
that's what I'm doing.
wow.
So I don't really have an entourage kind of. I spent 20 years in rock bands, so I had a lot of social life back then. But now I'm just an old man kind of thinking about things and writing. And I have a friend who's dying right now. He's got cancer, and his kidneys are gone, and his back is also gone. And so I get together with him and a couple of guys and play pinball once a week. But it's and we talk about the universe, and but it's mostly about pinball, I think. And pot is legal here, so that's a part of it too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you seem like a very nice guy, and I got that from your Twitter interactions with me. You saw what happened when I put the God post on Twitter. It was just God, 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 and I got a lot of antagonism from some hostile atheists. And you know what they're like. You know the
I
internet
do.
atheists. You know what they're like, right?
It's very disappointing to me.
You were a breath of fresh air. You were like, I heard angels singing whenever you would interact with me. It was like, ah, like
Well,
a human being who cares, who's open, loving. I'm very sensitive, so I welcome that, and I wish there was more of that. So,
well, me too, and I think that that's what we need to work towards. I think that that is my main criticism of religion, other than you know, the stuff that ends up on the news, is the divisiveness of it. And in some respects, that's kind of built in because that's community. We're together and they're not like us. They don't listen and they don't pay attention to God, and we should hold them in our hearts, maybe even pray for them. But, that's an example of what you don't want to be. And, you hold your children's hand when, it's, there's and I mean, it's interesting as you see, politics become. I mean, religion has always been a very political. The institutions of religion have always been a very political kind of a thing, and as politics become the new religion, new belief system, without all the other stuff, without the compassion, without the, I mean, the thing about getting together once a week is that you're putting eyes on everybody in your community. And by doing that, you can tell things that they wouldn't tell you over a text or even over the phone, or maybe even standing right there, they wouldn't use the words and articulate it, but you can see it. And sometimes, if you catch things early, a hug can do a lot of good. And if you don't catch things early, then there's nothing that will work, it's, and I think, obviously the COVID thing hasn't helped a whole lot. But we're not a society that's prone to walking up and giving people hugs, even if they're friends of ours now, but certainly not strangers, unless you happen to be in a church environment, and that's kind of very refreshing.
Amazing. So, sort of a tangential question. Would your wife come on and talk to me about her Catholic faith, or no? Is she too shy?
Well, she would have to do it separate from me.
Of course.
And I don't know. She does not like to talk about God.
No?
She doesn't like to talk about politics. Her parents, like I said, her father's very devout. She's 10 years junior to all her other siblings. And she just, there are things that you don't talk about in public. And so I don't know. I would certainly love to hear what she had to say about it. So I will definitely run it by her.
Yeah. Ask her. Tell her you can understand now, having met me. It's a very biographical, loose conversation where I let the person decide what they're interested in talking about. So, there's no, I'm not going to be bullying her or anything. That's far from it.
Oh, right. Well, she listened to some of the podcasts with me yesterday. So
Okay.
she knows that you are, obviously, we both got the impression that you were articulate and kind and
Okay. Who'd you listen to? Which guest did you hear?
We were kind of bouncing through them. She's a real podcast fan, and I listen to them with her sometimes on car trips.
Okay.
But it's not something that I'm not familiar with. I'm here today because I say yes to everything. No, that's true. If there an opportunity to do something that I haven't done comes up, then I automatically say yes. And very frequently later, I'm thinking, what am I doing? I mean, I had one recently. My wife, who's has a great corporate job. She's an incredibly talented graphic designer in the automotive industry, and she was putting together a Christmas party for staff and also for some clients. And we had been to New Orleans a couple of years ago, and in New Orleans they have poets in the street, and you can walk up to them and give them some money and they'll write you a poem. And her memory is we walked up and we gave her a word, my son's name, Sonny, and he wrote us a poem and we went away happy. And my memory is we went and we gave him a word, and then we went and got a beer and walked around a little bit and came back later for the poem. At any rate, she said, do you think you could do something like that? And of course I said yes, and she said, well, you'd have about 5 minutes per person, because there's, this is however many people are on it. And my brain was like, there's nobody can do that. I mean, maybe somebody can, but I certainly can't. And my mouth said, I'd love to. And I had about, I think, almost 2 weeks to prepare for it. So I dropped what I was working on. I haven't gotten back to it yet. It's a really fun sci-fi book. I love it. But it's and she gave me a list. Another thing popped, creative people, designers and what have you. She got me a list somehow of everybody in her company and the names of their pets. So I wrote poems for, I mean, it was a very strange thing. So I had, I ended up with about 60 poems. Because some of them were practicing. I pulled up a word generator, and just whatever word popped up, I'd write a poem for it with the clock on and trying to get it under 5 minutes. And then I had all these poems that were about pets I'd never met, for pet owners I mostly hadn't met. But it's a really strange thing, because I had like 25 poems that were written for an audience of one, and then like 25 poems that are written based on one word. It was weird, but it was fun. I got to rip the back of a house off with a backhoe one time. I've been in a couple movies because of it. So I'm not complaining, and I'm happy to be here with you. But that's honestly the reason I'm here today, is that any time an opportunity to try something new. And that's also why I've been to so many churches and places of worship with people, because it comes up in conversation. And anytime I'm invited, it just feels like an honor. And so I go, and I think we're all looking for those connections, and I feel like we are all fundamentally connected in an inescapable way that eventually we'll be able to see scientifically. But now, as a musician, I can certainly feel it.
Pretty wild. I actually,
And-
go ahead.
no, yeah.
I
Excellent.
actually know a poet in New Orleans, Raymond Jackson.
I'm not sure if that's who wrote our poem, but
His nickname is Moose. He's a big, tall guy,
oh no,
ex-military.
this was a little
Wasn't him?
guy.
Wasn't
No,
him?
that would have been awesome though.
He's quite a character. I met him in 2000 at a vegan restaurant. We were working at this hippie vegan restaurant, my wife and I both,
Nice.
and met a lot of characters. We're still in touch. We're still friends with the owner, and she's quite a lady. But yeah, that's the beauty of, life and community and meeting people, and that's why I do this podcast, is because I just love people, love meeting them and hearing their stories. And so you will ask your wife. I don't know if she'll come on. I always ask my male guests to invite their wives on, and they always tell me that she's too shy. She's not interested. It's more of a it's more of a guy thing talking on that. It's more of a guy thing talking about stuff that shouldn't be spoken of in public, right?
Well, I'm very interested in how to speak to people with different beliefs. I mean, belief is so messed up. I mean, it's absolutely essential, obviously, but the way that it's okay. So I think that the acquisition of knowledge always comes in three steps. There's always a what. What is it? And then comes why, and then how. And the what and the how are really important. And the why is kind of a strange question, because anytime you ask why, there are an infinite number of answers to that question. It's just you have to find the one that satisfies you so that you can move on to the next step. So what is it? Well, it's volleyball. Well, why should I care about that? Well, it'll improve your stamina. Well, I don't care about that. Well, your hand-eye coordination will get better. Well, I don't care about that. Well, you meet people. Oh, okay. How do I play? I mean, and we do that over and over again. Sometimes the what is very obvious, but it's very, I mean, it's hard because it's not exactly linear in my head, but it makes sense. I mean, and this is why I do these, try to talk to people, because there was obviously, if I know something and I've known it my whole life, and beyond a shadow of a doubt, there's no way it can be wrong. I've always known it. And you come to me and say, Jonas, man, that's not right. I'm sorry. And then you show me. I may be embarrassed, but I'm going to take that new information and I'm going to change my worldview to incorporate the facts that I've just been taught. Now, if I believe that same thing with my whole heart, and I've always believed that, and my parents believed it, and you come to me and say, oh, Jonas, that's just not right. I don't hear anything you say after that. And furthermore, I hate you now. I mean, we just have a different, but that being true on the negative side, knowledge doesn't motivate us the way that belief does. It doesn't have that role. So that it's not enough to know that our planet is in crisis right now and we could do something about it. Because of we have this technology. We have to really feel the connection, and we have to believe that it's important. We have to believe that we can do it also, which I think is not the case. But so often it's frustrating, because so often when we talk about these, the problems that we have with the planet specifically, but in society as well, it's when you try to propose a solution, and just for the sake of conversation, Very often the response is, oh, people would never go away with that. You couldn't do it. Who'd pay for it? Well, pardon me, but if we've got enough, if we've got the resources to do it, the materials, and we've got the manpower to do it, and we have the technology to do it, and feed the fucking people. Who's going to pay for it? I don't give a shit. Write me I'll write you a check. It's not going to cash today, but we'll figure it out. Just feed them. I mean, it's just stupid. I mean, like for 3 months they're on, and some of this happened by accident, but for well, longer than that. Last year they're telling us about these, rivers in the sky and these horrible floods that are coming to California. Well, we've got aquifers that were drained 2/3 in the last 200 years. Took millions of years. I mean, why wouldn't we be engineering it to take this God sent water, whatever? I mean, okay, I'll get back to that. But so this water that nature is providing, however you want to define that, and I mean, water was one of the first things we had to figure out. They built the aqueducts, and they didn't have backhoes and cranes, and they had simple tools, and people who were willing to work real hard, or people who had to work. Slaves aren't always really, and I'm not sure that slaves built it. I don't really know. I wasn't there, but I'm just saying that we can move water. So why wouldn't we be engineering things so that this water runs into our aquifers and into the reservoirs that are also at their lowest levels in recorded history? And it was so much water that it did really help out the reservoirs a lot. But getting it back into the the aquifers underground. I mean, we got gravity on our side. We had to pump it out. We can just drop it in, but it would take some engineering.
Yeah, I just want to let you know, I appreciate your love of Mother Earth, but I don't buy into all the climate change nonsense. I firmly believe that God is in control, and all the natural disasters and all the suffering and starvation and war and everything else is a consequence of our rebellious abuse of free will. So it's a different perspective. It's a very different perspective, but we all agree that we want to breathe fresh, clean air and drink clean water. And so we're all ecologists in that very common sense sort of way. But we don't all believe that the end is near, and or at least not for that reason. Like we know that the end is coming, like from a Christian perspective, for sure.
Yeah, you have to. That's the other weird thing. I mean, when Peter and John were running around saying, "Look, don't make connections. Get your shit right with God.
Yeah.
It's coming. He's coming." Right? They weren't doing it because they thought, 2,000 years from now, the guy might drop in and we want our house clean. They were thinking this is
imminent,
right time.
Imminent. Yeah, well, that's the way it is, because our lives are so short. Like, I mean, you talked about your brother; his life was short, and we don't know. We don't know if we're going to get another breath, much less another day or week or month or year.
We don't, but we do know that climate change is real, and we may, our contribution to it is the only piece that's in debate. We know that 195,000 years ago, due to rapid climate change, due to climate change, to weather that ended up unfavorable, that the hominid population of the planet dropped, it looks like, to the neighborhood of 1,000. And we know that 74,000 years ago, again, due to massive climate change, and also coinciding with the last eruption of a super volcano on this planet, the hominid population of this planet dropped below 10,000 and stayed that way for 20,000 years. So we also know that the dinosaurs were here for 160 odd million years, which is a very successful run, but nobody would argue they reached their evolutionary potential, or the peak of what they didn't have supercomputers, and certainly when they looked up and saw that meteor coming, they couldn't do anything about it. But we can, and because we can, doesn't that confer a kind of, if God created everything, then he created everything. These things, when we date rocks, when we date bones, when we date artifacts, obviously with artifacts we've got context to aid things, but we can do it because these isotopes degrade at a predictable rate. Now, if God created everything, then God created those isotopes also, and perhaps he's leaving clues for us if you want an intelligent. But we can't say that these, I mean, we can say with great certainty that these things happen. There are a lot of things we can't say that about. A lot of it is guesses. But when we look at a climate, because we've got ice that's been frozen for, millions of years, and so, well, some cases, and because we've got a fossil record in the rocks is a much better kind of indicator. We can go back and look at rocks that, I mean, and really see not just what we're looking at in the rocks, but what was going on in the environment. We know, for example, that for the first billion years that this planet was here, there was no oxygen in the atmosphere. There was no oxygen in the seas. If there was, we wouldn't have been able to have iron deposits, for example. And we know there are iron deposits. So if God created the universe, then God created it that way because he knew we'd need iron, maybe, right? Certainly, if God created man and life, then first God created algae. God created tiny little shellfish, because without them, we wouldn't have the oxygen to exist. I mean, the number, and you can look at them. I mean, it certainly doesn't change the math to look at them as miracles, but the number of things that had to go absolutely perfectly for us to end up here, and the massive probabilities against all of those, I think, is a very legitimate and realistic argument for, intelligent design. But again, I don't think it really matters.
Yeah, I just want to make one clarification again. This is going to happen a lot, I think, between us. So
It's okay.
But I do believe that the entire universe is less than 10,000 years old. So there goes evolution. There goes all of your.
Okay. But this gets into something else, because that's absolutely impossible. I mean, it's not. This is the thing about belief, is that, and one of the problems with belief is that it doesn't require any facts. If I believe it, that's enough. And so if I'm born into a family that's religious, for example, by the time I'm old enough to understand the things in the book that I'm supposed to believe, I know how vitally important it is that I believe them. I know Uncle Frank doesn't go to church and he's going to hell. I hear my parents talk about what happens. I've gotten my share of spankings, or whatever your discipline of choice is, and I know how important it is. I could lose my parents, I could lose so it's, if we have a reason to believe things, we find a way to believe them, even if that means discounting facts, and flat out ignoring them. There's not a way. First of all, human history has a written record that goes back almost 10,000 years. We settled down and started farming about 12,000 years. 15,000 years ago, the ice where I'm sitting was 2 miles thick. These are facts. They're not things that people believe. They're things that we can prove.
Yeah, I disagree. I mean, I was atheist 25 years, came to the faith at age 39 in 2009. Because I was raised Protestant, up until the age 14. I lost my faith at age 14, and then I was atheist. I came back to the faith, and, I accept all of the faith-based beliefs in Christianity when I chose Christianity.
Christianity does not require a 10,000-year-old Earth.
No,
it doesn't.
No, but
none of them do.
But listen carefully. I am a monotheist because of philosophy, because of the uncaused first cause, but I'm a Christian by a leap of faith. And even if I weren't a Christian, I mean, the Jews and the Muslims also believe in the young Earth. So most of them, I mean,
no.
The Jews do.
No.
You know what year it is?
Jewish.
You know what year it is on the Jewish calendar?
But
you know what year it is?
It's 57.
Yeah, something like that. 5720 or something like that.
Know.
Yeah. So,
but no, that's not a fair thing to say.
But the regardless of the statistics, I don't care about the statistics. What I care about as a Christian is the Christian dogmas, which are immutable truths, eternal truths of God, and the dogmas don't permit any form of evolution, theistic or otherwise.
They're so in 1992, the Catholic Church apologized to Galileo, which was all well and good, but they forgot to apologize to humanity for the 300 years of the sabotaging science. There were, for a long time, scientists were not allowed to describe what they saw in the universe for fear of being excommunicated or, shunned or losing their financing. and it's if the words, first of all, we're talking about human words, not God words. But if the words to be true in the book, it has to be true in the world. And if there is a discrepancy, then the world is right. But I think what happens is a lot of this is interpretation. When we look at the original, Toranic text, and the Torah is interesting because it is kind of a central book, but Jewish thought, obviously, we're talking about the Pentateuch. That's the whole Torah. It's a very small, it's not, there's not a lot in it. It's history and rules. But the Judaism has a lot that goes outside of that, the thoughts and philosophies of the rabbis and rabbinical community, and also practitioners that have been built on over the years. And I think that as a Jew, I think that it is not just okay, but essential to question the existence of God. And I think it's expected that you'll look at the universe and go, of course, how else could this be? Right? But in order to accept that, you have to be able to accept the truth about the world. And certainly it's not a reasonable thing to say that the world, you could, I can't, I'm trying to put it in a context where it would be okay to say that something only existed for 10,000 years. But I don't.
Okay, can I tell you a little,
yes,
a little story from the Bible, from the New Testament, where there's a wedding at Cana and Jesus and his mother go, and disciples, and Jesus does the miracle with the wine. He turns the 6 jugs of ritual cleansing water into wine. And this is water that people have been washing their feet in, right? So when the wine was served, it was X number of seconds or minutes old, but it had the appearance that the grapes were grown and ripened and fermented and all the rest.
It was delicious.
It was delicious. But the point is that there was an apparent history there that was only apparent because God is all powerful and he can create something that looks like it has a history. Right?
The history is the fun thing. That's the fun thing about that story is what's not stated, because it's not just this. Okay, that's the first miracle. Jesus finds out that God's his father when he's 12 years old, and that seems like it would be a good time to let's elaborate. And then we don't hear about him again until he's 30, and he shows up at a party with his mom, and he doesn't say, "Hey, maybe this will work." Definitely it'll work. And this is how we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that both the number 13 being unlucky and the idea that Jews are cheap came from the days that Jesus was wandering around in the desert, because he would walk into a bar and he'd go, 13 waters, please. And then on the way out, he'd be like, yo, bartender, good service. What's 20% of nothing? And I'm pretty sure that's a true story that I may have made it up a little bit, but I'm just saying that I know the story, and it's a weird one because it really is it's a miracle, but it's a miracle of vanity. The thing it was shame that Jesus was trying to relieve the groom from, because they didn't have the means, so they put their best wine out. And they ran out of wine, and that's it. That's all they had. And Jesus said, well, we're not going to stop this party, man. Let's keep things going. Bring me that water, and we'll get this all fixed up. And he did. But again, it's interesting that they didn't. That kind of suggests that he'd done it before, right? So maybe this guy's not so don't party, because it sounds like he was kind of a partying dude.
Yeah. Well, he definitely done it before in creation. Like he created, Adam was formed fully adult.
No. Jesus didn't make no
Jesus
Adam.
did it. Jesus did it. Yes, Jesus
Didn't
did
do
it.
it. He was not there for Adam.
Jesus made Adam in his own image. They were like twins. If you look at them, they're like twins.
Right.
This is the
Ted
tradition.
Nugent
This
too.
is the tradition.
It's triplets too, because Ted was the guitar player.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't expect you to be impressed by my story time and storytelling from the
I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to
Well,
interrupt you, but that's such a kooky story to me.
Yeah.
And again,
It was worth it. It was worth it for that joke, that bar joke. I'm going to use that.
I'm so sorry.
I'm going to use that. That's
sorry.
a good one.
I'm a bad person. And I know if there is a hell, I'm going there. But for now, I'm just enjoying this life in this world, and how do we make it better? But very often, I think, in the Bible, it's the untold part of the story that I want to hear about. When God comes to Abraham and he says, you've been a pretty good guy, and I appreciate that. But there is this thing I want you to do for me, just one more thing. And he, it's not a suggestion. He tells him flat out to circumcise himself. Now, Abraham's in his 40s at the time, and to go home and circumcise all the male members of his family. Now, you may remember he had trouble conceiving boys. So fortunately, he had no sons, but he had lots of servants, and some of his daughters were probably married, and they don't really go into those conversations, which I think I don't know that anybody quit. It's hard to quit your job as a slave, I think, or as a son-in-law is even harder. That would be the weirdest one. Like, I know that the first time I went home to stay with my wife at her parents' house, my father-in-law put me in a bedroom by his gun case, and I think that, we say things. So anyway, that conversation is so bizarre because, Abraham's like, okay. And as he's, they're wrapping up the conversation, I think Abraham's like on his way out. God says, by the way, I'm on my way to take out Sodom and Gomorrah because they're just being assholes, And Abraham's, whoa, what if I could find you 10 people who aren't assholes? I don't think that's the exact language, but it's hard because it's translated. So it may be, and God says, well, if you can find me 10 men who aren't awful, evil, then I'll spare everybody. And Abraham goes, well, what if it was only 9? If I could find 9. Now they dedicate a verse to each of these all the way down to 1. And Abraham says, well, what if there's 1? If I could find you 1 good person.
I think it went from 50 to 10, actually.
I think it's 10 to 1. But we can check
quibble.
it.
We can quibble.
Actually, it would be an easy thing to look up right now. But at any rate, he ends up at 1. And Abraham says, aha! My cousin Lot. He's a good guy. He lives over there in Sodom. And God sends his angels to check. That pretty much wraps up the conversation, right? Weird fucking conversation, pardon me. But so God sends the angels in to Sodom to check it out and see if there are good people there. And on their way in, they come upon Lot's house, and Lot sees them, not knowing they're angels. They're just beautiful looking dudes, beautiful guys, beautiful, says so repeatedly. And he says, hey, come on into my house. And they say, no, we're going into Sodom. We want to check it out and, see. How are you going to check out Sodom and not see the nightlife, right? So anyway, he says, no, it's not safe for you. You're strangers. And why don't you come into my house and I'll feed you and I'll wash your feet and I'll put you up for the night. You can go in the morning when the light's up and everything's safe. So somehow he talks them into coming into his house. And before they even sit down for feet washing, which I think probably meant more when you weren't wearing a lot, probably sandals are not the best footwear, So before they even get to the meal, the townspeople are surrounding his house. And he says, and they say, hey, we saw those beautiful men go into your house. Send them out so that we can play with them, have some fun. We just, nothing, no big deal. Lot goes out and he says, you know what? These people are under my roof. They're under my protection. And the townspeople are insistent. They saw how good looking they were and they just really wanted to party. And Lot says, I will not send them out, but I have 2 daughters who have never been with a man. I will send them out, and you can have your way with them. And, but you're going to leave my house guests alone. So, I mean, that right there would be a weird story if it just stopped there, right? But the angels go in, they check it out. Turns out everybody's assholes. And God decides not to keep his word to Abraham. In spite of finding one person who he deemed good, he instead went to Lot and said, you can go. Take your wife, take your children. Don't look back. Everybody else is over with, right? So he sent them out, and obviously Lot's wife looked back. She turned into a pillar of salt. He destroyed Sodom. Everybody, men, women, children, everybody in the city wiped out. And the next thing we hear about is Lot's daughters, who are concerned that their father, this great man, has no sons. So they devise a plan, and they get him really drunk. I mean, shit-faced so he won't remember the next day, and they rape him. And his first daughter conceives a child that will go on to be the father of great nations. And the next night, they get him really drunk again, and they rape him, and the second daughter conceives a son who will go on to be the father of great nations. And these are strange stories. And I know that this is the Pentateuch. These are the Jewish stories, but they're foundational stories for Christianity, and they share characters and very often stories with the Quran as well. And I think that they may have had a greater meaning 5,000 years before refrigerators. For example, a pork taboo. Pigs don't have sweat glands. I mean, not enough to really recognize. They also don't have hair on their bodies. And they also only have one stomach. So cows and goats and sheep, which have 4 stomachs each, can eat pretty much anything. Whatever kind of vegetation they can find, they can eat it. They're not going to get a lot of nutrition out of it, but they'll chew it. It goes into the first stomach. They spit it up. They chew it some more. It goes back in their ruminators, and they can derive calories and nutrition from things that we could not, and we could not feed to our children. Pigs have a very similar anatomy, which is why they use them for crash tests and stuff like that. Well, I mean, I'm sure you're a big fan of the gene splicing and all that, but they are breeding pigs for organ harvests for humans because they're so similar to us. But so, number one, in order to raise a pig in the desert, it's going to be competing with your children for whatever vegetable nutrition that you have. It can't eat anything different from what we can eat. And second, if you put it out in the sun, again, it's not covered in hair and it doesn't have sweat glands, it will sunburn to death very, very quickly. So in the absence of enough water, which you don't have enough water to give them to make mud, they will pee and make mud out of that, which is dirty as hell, but also freaking ingenious because without it, they'd die. But you can see how people would believe that a pig is a dirty animal in the desert. Now, if you live in Hawaii and you've got more vegetation than anybody could possibly eat in one sitting, it's a very convenient way to turn vegetable protein into animal protein, which it turns out is not as big a deal. But animal protein is very dense in nutrients. And so before, when it was harder to get food, it was actually a pretty useful way for us to keep people alive. And I mean, it probably has to do with the massive amount of growth that we did in a very short amount of time. Evolutionary, developmentally. I mean, it's hard. If I agreed to read a book that you suggested, would you read a book that I suggested?
I can put it on my list, but my list is really bloated already. But you can try it, yeah. You can. I'll definitely put it on my list.
Okay. There's a book by Bill Bryson called A Short History of Almost Everything. And it's very non-dogmatic, and it's very not preachy, and it's very cool. And it basically is a book about the current scientific thought.
Yeah.
So it takes us from fractions of a second after the Big Bang, which is God would have been right before that, if that's, well, I mean, that's how it works. The math takes us back to fractions of a second after the Big Bang. We don't know what happened before that. I personally have a lot of trouble with the Big Bang because nothing explodes into existence usually in our world. And when we look at our world, everything's the same. When we look at life, the genetic code for making I don't know, not a garden gnome because they don't have DNA, but a fruit fly's DNA and our DNA, the parts that we both have are real similar. Instructions for making life are very specific and really interesting. But I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, just so you know, I did fact check it. It was from 50 down to 10, so your story's got a couple of little holes in it, but it's okay.
I'll have to pull it out. I believe you.
You'll have to revise.
I believe you. It's been a minute, yeah.
Yeah. So I've got 9 minutes left. I want to have you back and talk some more. You're an endless source of factoids and entertainment and everything in between. So, and poetry. I want to hear some of your poetry. Did you look up my? Did you listen to any of my poetry that I put on SoundCloud? My chirpies.
I didn't. I didn't even know about that. I would love to though.
Yeah. I sent you a link on Twitter.
Oh, I missed it. I don't know.
I'll resend it to you. It's complete nonsense.
Thank you. I've been listening to your podcasts, but
okay. But
I would love.
Yeah. It's very silly stuff. Very silly.
Okay. I think. Oh, you did send me a poem, and I read it.
Oh, okay.
But it cut off the first words. I was able to see the rest of it, so kind of able to make it out and stuff.
But okay, because that's a link. That's a link for an audio version where it's reading it to you. So okay. I'll let you listen to that if you want. But my sense of humor is absurdist. Like I like the absurd. I'm drawn to the absurd.
I like that too.
I also like dark humor.
Okay.
So those are the two types of humor that I'm into. What about yourself?
I like humor. I like smiling. I like
you like friendly,
things that
funny,
bring people together.
Friendly, funny, nice humor.
It's a difficult thing because very often jokes have a butt to them, and so I don't like making other people the butt of my jokes. So I tend to do a lot of self-deprecating stuff. Okay. But I really love to laugh. I never mean to hurt anybody. And I like poetry wise, most of my humorous stuff is body to the point of, it's shamefully body.
Fart jokes?
No, like I worked in a kitchen for a little while, and some of the guys like to put on hip hop. And so there was a lot of rap songs, but it was all this kind of like a lot of bragging, a lot of kind of what seems misogynistic to me. And I thought, if you're going to talk for a living, say something that makes me think, say something that makes me laugh. And so this line popped into my head in the course of that. It was actually almost related to this conversation. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. And if you give me 20 minutes, I'll be sinning again. And it kind of like just wouldn't go away. So I had to write this rap song out. It is filthy. It basically is a letter to the father of the girl who's backstage doing the band. I think that's fair. So yeah, I mean, in the proper context, it's very, very funny. And I just don't know that a proper context for that actually exists. But if it did, it would be very funny. It also could be tremendously offensive if you happen to know any women or have no. I mean, that's the thing. It's all consensual. So,
so very, very quickly, how did you meet your lovely wife?
She used to come see my band.
You
was
may have
playing in a
mentioned that,
band.
yeah.
Yeah, I was playing in a band called Cowboy Messiah. Broke up in 2011. And there was this really interesting cat used to show up with camera all the time, and we weren't really, I thought maybe that's his way of meeting people because he's kind of shy. And after like 2 years, he said, "Okay, I'm pretty much done, but I need to interview you guys." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So he'd been making this video about the band, and so we invited him to our next rehearsal. And actually, my wife, came, and she was holding the boom mic for the interviews.
Ah.
I guess I technically met her at a pool table in a Detroit dive bar called the Old Miami. He had brought her to the show, but that was
Cool.
the first
Wow.
time I really talked
How
to
romantic. That's a pretty cool
her.
story. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So can we
It's very
watch?
nice to meet you.
Yeah,
What? Oh, sorry.
can you send me links to that documentary? I really want to watch that documentary about your
Oh, it
rock
ended
band.
up just being, yeah. It's just I'll find it.
Yeah?
There's something inherently hilarious about an interview video for a band that nobody's ever heard of. I think. So yeah, I'll find it and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Very cool. So my friend Daniel Drazinovich is in the chat. He's a nice guy, and he asked for your Twitter handle, so he'll probably be saying hi to you on Twitter.
Oh, great! Hi, Daniel.
And so I'll be seeing you on. Yeah.
We can't hear people, and I can't see things they type. Only you
I've
can.
got a little panel over here with the live chat, and you're gonna see it if you play back the video tomorrow. You'll see the live chat pop up and people chatting and
Okay.
and whatever.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about any of the things that I imagined we'd get to.
Next
but
time. Next time.
I would love that. I would love that, and I will talk to my wife about see how she feels.
And you always say yes, right? So if I invite you back, you're gonna say yes.
I do. I mean, technically, it won't be the first. Well, it'll be my first time being on a second time.
So I hope you enjoyed it, and I certainly did.
Man.
It was just nice to meet you.
I enjoy you, and I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. And
Thank
like I
you
said,
so
thanks
much.
for having me on. I'll find that link and I'll send it over to you.
Excellent. Take good care and give my love to your family, okay?
Thank you so much. Likewise.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
God bless it. Oh, well. Okay.
I converted you, yeah.